Axons Unleashed.
G'day ladies and gents, Robbie Turner's my name. Welcome to another cracking episode of Axons Unleashed. I say that all the time, but we are very selective with our guests. I don't just want any fucking Tom, Dick and Harry here, although I'm happy to talk about pretty much anything and everything. But as a quick little heads up before I introduce my amazing guests, I've been wanting to talk about this particular topic for ages. Hopefully you're all thinking, what the fuck is that going to mean?
Property.
But it's not property. I get the opportunity to talk about that all the time, but it's all about, how can I characterize it? Exercising my way out of the need to have a shoulder replacement. And now I'm joined by James, mate, Axon extraordinaire. 5 years almost coming up to you being here.
Yeah.
But first time on the podcast.
Long time listener. First time on the call.
Welcome, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, it is the
Axons
first time,
Unleashed.
yeah.
Just give us a bloody 30-second spiel on who you are and how much you love working here, and I'll slip you a 50.
All right. Pretty good. So I discharged, 2019. Came across the Axon boat and been working here for 5 years now in property. So before that, of course, I built my first property as a client whilst in sunny Afghanistan with Robbie by my side. So, donned the shirt, doing this job for five years, and I absolutely love it. So
what's it like, mate, when you meet a client, take them through the process, they build a house, we do an end-to-build coaching session with them, they've made $100,000 and they're just so grateful. What's that feeling like being a service provider, noting you felt it when I did the same thing with you and Caitlin?
Yeah. I guess if I take a step back and look at my previous role as an intel, always having to report on the bad news and telling the bosses something is going to happen or something may happen or that probability. My job now is to tell people how much they have succeeded with their property and how happy they are.
Good on you, mate.
If I can sort of contextualize it, there was a client the other day who, they, Josh and Amy, love yous, took a little selfie because it marked their significant component of their life together in buying a property.
So you were presenting the property to them,
presenting
about
the
to put
property,
the expression of interest in, and they captured it with a selfie.
They captured
now,
it with
what
a
sort of
selfie.
selfie was it?
It was a little Polaroid.
Old
camera.
school, new school.
Young couple with a Polaroid camera took a selfie and they put it up on their pin-up board, their life achievements. And at that, I don't know, I've been doing this job for 5 years, like I said, and until then, it didn't really dawn on me that we are significantly making that pinpoint change in people's lives where they pivot and make that big step. So it's exhilarating.
So good, mate.
It really
so
is.
good.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you're here because you too share a journey of significant injuries from the military.
Yep.
You haven't had to have a major operation so far.
Not yet. Couple of small ones, but nothing major.
That's just a bit of panel beating, mate.
Yes.
There's been no
that.
massive bloody replacement of parts. And of course, you and I are on our DVA journey.
Yes.
DVA rehab journey. Going to our service providers. We've got the same osteopath we go to, do a bit of rigs recovery, but you've got this awesome sort of physiotherapist. Would you characterise him, Stevie B? What is he? What's he got on his shirt? Exercise
physiologist.
So you've been talking about him for ages, and I know you and Justin are going there, and you've got a nice little routine. How awesome is it when you've got an injury and you've now got someone that you've created a relationship with that you've committed to now rocking up to?
Yeah.
You never cancel on those sessions, do you?
No. Well, you got physiotherapy, which of course it has its place, but when we're incorporating that in with exercise with Steve, it's about really getting your body moving because a physiotherapist can do a bit of treatment on hand and then send you home with a couple of exercises, but it's up to you to do that in your own time. And let's face it, no one really sticks to their routine 100% of the time.
Correct.
All right. And until you bring in the exercise physiologist, where you have somebody, you've got a timing, a booking, you are going to a gym, and you are working with on recovering your body within the physiology.
Yeah.
So it's motivation because you are, I'm feeling better, and also because I've got somebody there waiting for me.
Yeah.
That's dependent on me being there.
So good.
Accountability.
I'm lucky. I've got Matt, my brother-in-law, that does the same thing with me. And I guess, you're like, hey, this dude, Steve, he doesn't have a defence background, but he's working with the defence community over the last 10 years.
Yes.
I really want him to come on Axons Unleashed.
Yep.
boom, pivot across.
Here we
Stevie
are.
B,
How are
welcome
you,
to
mate?
Axons Unleashed, mate. How are
Cheers,
you?
mate. Thanks for having me.
Now, you and I just met outside for half an hour, but I do feel like I sort of know a little bit about you because James and Justin just rave about you all the time. So, mate, I'm really looking forward to allowing you to tell your story about how much you love providing that sort of exercise physiologist, hands-on physical care, mental care, overall well-being, and like, you know, maybe some of the trends that you've seen over the industry as well.
Yeah, for sure, mate. No, firstly, I'd like to appreciate for having me on. It's actually a good honour to be here with Jamesy. We've been working with him for about 18 months.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
And as I was saying before, I've been working with the veteran community probably for a good solid 10 years, on and off, whereabouts, but in between with a couple of athletes and, you know, different sports teams and a mix of stuff. But there's always been veterans peppered in there. And it's sort of at the moment, it's come a bit of a niche of mine now in the last 2 to 3 years, mainly working with the boys and getting them going. So yeah, it's been a good experience, and I'm happy to come here today and have a chat with you guys about Jamesy and all the other boys.
Yep.
Let's do what we normally do on the podcast here. Take us back to the start. Like, get to know you, who you are.
Yep.
Like, where'd you grow up? What did you excel in at school? And then how did you get into the exercise physiologist game?
Yeah, and probably much like you guys, I was a super active kid. I grew up in northern New South Wales Casino, a little country town, and
When I was like 17 once, did a road trip up here with some mates. I'm like, fucking casino. Fuck the Pacific Highway. Let's go to the casino.
Get the
wallets
drove
out.
over there in the early 90s, and there's no casino there.
I was going to say, if you blinked, you would have missed the town, I'd say.
Well,
False advertising.
There's not much there now. Shout out to all my followers in casino. And there was fucking a lot less there in 1992, let me tell you.
That's right, yeah. And it's not what you think it is down in Casino, but it is a funny old country town. We're the beef capital, which is arguably with, I think it's Rockhampton, which is like a bit of a funny dynamic that we always have an argument with. But yeah, I grew up down that way, and I really loved rugby league, sport, and all that sort of type of thing. And I was fortunate enough, I was able to get like a bit of a sporting scholarship to come up here and went to PBC. And during that, playing like sort of like a bit of elite sport with rugby league, with the AIS, I really fell in love with strength and conditioning side of things. And then as I got a little bit older, playing competitive sport, I was traveling overseas and I was studying exercise science because I loved it. And then I was over there studying kinesiology, playing rugby. And it was during sort of that time I obviously found there was my knack, obviously something I've been doing since I was a teenager, in and out of gyms, helping people with even just PTing back in the early days when I was younger. I sort of came across exercise physiology, and it was basically putting exercise as the forefront to helping people with clinical and injuries and stuff like that, and using the evidence with exercise physiology or exercise science to help people's lives, really. So I went gung-ho with that, and I finished that up probably when I was about 25. So
Right.
yeah.
It brings me straight to a point that you mentioned outside. You said if you're carrying around a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah,
What
that's
am I
right.
referring to there?
And so that's probably, and I'd be to this as well and every other allied health, but we all have our biases with treatment. And so, like I was saying, if you're just focusing on the one area, like we're talking about, like say if you're a surgeon, the only way you're going to fix things and the way your scope is through surgery. So you might go there and they're like, look, you need surgery on this or that. And you're not really going to stray outside of your scope. Whereas I'm obviously a little bit heavily more biased towards, no, let's try and rehab this thing, or there is some evidence.
Can I
for
tell
this.
my story in that
Yeah,
case? Because
absolutely.
that's exactly what happened to me. And you've known me for a long time.
Well, it's
and we-
effectively the path of least resistance in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
why would you
That's
go through
broken.
a full-on
I
surgery?
can fix it for you. But boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And then, you and I shared many social times outside of the Axon space. So we've seen each other's lives evolve and whatever else.
Yep.
As part of my DVA stuff about 18 months ago, I went to my surgeon and he's like, for those watching, I couldn't even really lift my shoulder up past horizontal, let alone put it down over my back. Couldn't put a belt on, none of that stuff.
Yeah,
Right? Couldn't
yep.
stand at ease with my arms behind my back there. A very basic, the most basic drill movement. And he's like, yeah, your shoulder's really bad. I'm like, bro, it's been like this for fucking, I love calling surgeons, bro. I love calling generals, bro. And he goes, yeah, mate, we're going to have to, surgery for you. I'm like, okay, cool. I sort of thought that would be the case. And he's writing up the DVA report that this is because of his injuries in artillery and special forces and fucking carrying ammo boxes and all that stuff, right? And I said, right, he goes, but it's probably going to be 3 or 4 months at the minimum, Mr. Turner, before you can get in to actually for us to do that. I said, is there something I can do in the meantime? He said, yeah, mate, there actually is. You can do a bit of prehab. I'm like, fucking, I've heard of rehab. I've never heard of prehab. I said, what's that? He goes, just go see someone, just go through your DVA doctor, go see someone to sort of just start to get a bit of movement in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I went to a physio, and like you said, you're there, and does a bit of panel beating for half an hour.
Yeah.
We do 5 minutes in the gym. He goes, "There's the exercises.
Go home,
Go
do
buy a
that."
ball. Go
Yeah.
buy a fucking thing." He goes, "I might just." The number one person in my experience that we're let down all the time is ourselves.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
unless we've
There
got
we
an
go.
accountability buddy.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, which I know that you've formed a huge part of Jane. And then little by little, I just went to see, I'm like, this physio thing's not working. I need someone to actually be there and commit to. My brother-in-law is a personal trainer, not allied health and all that sort of stuff. So not through DVA. I fund it. I don't care. I pay him good money because he's part of the family and I want to take the piss. And I've exercised my way out of it now. I'm fucking miles away from having a shoulder operation. And I know that's exactly what you were doing to James. How does that make you feel when you have a broken veteran come to you and they're probably on the pathway of having a pretty major operation with whatever part of their body is, and based on the work you do with them, they don't have to go down the operation path anymore?
That's right. No, and it's huge. It's and to see that happen, even with your story, I've seen that happen on countless periods. But it is fulfilling to see that, and to not have to go under like a full-on surgery and avoid that is a huge thing to achieve. And it goes to show, and with your experience, it probably realigns with, like I was saying earlier, that is what the sort of data is suggesting in the research. And even whether you're a chiropractic, osteopath, and you're following the evidence and research, they're all starting to formulate. And if you look at the American gyms, into this sort of model where exercise is the mainstay because of the effectiveness that you're just saying. There's probably two big research studies. One was on the shoulder and one was on the knee. And they got two groups. And basically with one group, they had, say, for example, I forget what the numbers were, but they'd get 1,000 people and they'd do a sham surgery where they just cut it open, go in there with a scope and have a look at what the shoulder's looking like and then stitch it back up. But the guy that got the sham surgery didn't know whether he had the surgery or not. And then they did a follow-up group, another 1,000 people, where they actually did the surgery. And then they did follow-ups about a year or two later. I'm not too sure what the actual time frame was. And then looked at their physical capacity later on post-surgery. And lo and behold, they both did their rehab. And there was no difference with the outcomes or pain levels of both the surgery groups. And that was the same with knee surgeries as well. So,
Whoa.
Yeah.
Just let that sink in for a second.
And it's a bit of education in that, because obviously, like I was saying, sometimes you do need the surgery, and that's fair. If your function's fully out of there, there's sometimes it's
So
it's not
let's be
possible,
clear.
but-
We are not dousing or
I'm not.
We're not saying
creating
don't get
doubt
surgery.
and allowing our listeners to disagree with what your surgeon's activities are.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
I'm just putting forward my own and now your shared experience, James, of if there is a time lapse between flash to bang, decision of surgery to when it's going to occur, do something and see what happens.
Exactly, and I'll say that to all the patients. Like, look, you've always got the option of surgery if you want to have it, but why not have a crack at see where we go with our exercise, our rehab, our strengthening, and then make a call from there.
The physio said one thing to me, and I'm going to pass it on, of course, because it still resonated with me. I was going to see him for weeks and weeks, and I just didn't feel like I was getting anywhere.
Yep.
Couldn't lift any extra weight, got no less strength, mobility, and everything, flexibility just wasn't coming along.
Yep.
I'm like, mate, I don't know if I'm just wasting your time. I'm putting in the effort. I'm trying to get this moving. I said, it's not working. He goes, you're the type of guy, I'll use a hammer analogy again. He goes, you've got a fucking sledgehammer in life. I'm like, that's a fair analogy. No one's ever said that to me before, but bull in a china shop's probably a more active analogy, sort of terminology to use.
Yep.
He goes, mate, what we're doing here is ice pick. Just tapping away at the ice pick. We're creating an ice sculpture now. You hit an ice sculpture with anything other than an ice pick, it's going to fucking break.
Yeah, yep.
He goes, just commit to the process. This is a long-term thing. You didn't break it in a few weeks. You're not going to fix it in a few weeks.
Yeah,
It's been immobile for the last few months. We're going to get the rust off the joint and get it moving and get it lubricating. The whole motion is lotion.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
And once I had that mindset shift, my axons were working differently. I'm like, all right, I'm now going to fucking commit to this for the long term. And here I am now, nearly 2 years later, and I'm 10 years away from having a bloody surgery.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
do you feel as if you're like the
for
curator
sure.
of the
'Cause
ice pick?
Say someone like yourself that's very bullish, you want to get straight back into your activity next week. The biggest thing, like you were saying, is, and probably like you guys with the young people you have, like wanting to get into the property, is education on the injury, but also the timeframes and just being at ease with that. It's like, oh, I want to come in and buy a house, but there's always going to be this lengthy process. Potentially, there's a few little nuances. It is possible, but there is just this little educational period. And then once you're on board with that, and a lot of people see the value in strengthening it, and after getting the education, you will see the outcomes a lot better. And then obviously the mindset to it is a huge thing. And that's like the power of placebo too, isn't it? So if you're on board and you believe it's going to work, it most likely will work too.
Well, this is the message I'm trying to pass on. I wish someone had given me this message back in the day. Can I cut to you, James?
Yeah.
Is this resonating with you as well? You've seen the journey I've been on.
Absolutely. And, even when the doctor said to me, we can perform surgery on your back and we can sever nerves and reduce the pain. But in the meantime, and there is a surgery, like you said, surgery is always an option. In the meantime, let's try this option, going through an exercise physiologist. And for the first 6 months of working with you, Steve, it was very lightweight, right? It was all more mobility,
For sure, yeah.
Getting everything just moving again. Like I knew I could lift far more, but you're like, no, just keep it like this. And at the time, like you were saying, it's like I'm just taking tiny chips. What's happening? But one thing I did notice all of a sudden is my headspace. You said had headspace a few times, getting out, getting active, and then all of a sudden the pain started reducing. And the headspace of being able to get out and interact and start moving your body. And even if you are making tiny chips, my headspace changed a lot. And that's the second component.
Your attitude and your happiness and your motivation.
Yeah, like mental health is, always a second component of, you can either surgery, and I'm sure many people have seen this before, where you had a surgery, the next following weeks is demoralizing because you either, like say you have a shot, you can't move your shoulder, or you can't move your back, or you're stuck in bed, and then you're on painkillers, and then you've got to do the recovery anyway. So that headspace, you're still going to go through that anyway. And the way I looked at it was, let's do this before I have to make a surgery choice. And I'm so happy that I've not been forced to make that surgery choice.
It's one of those things. You got to choose your hard.
That's right.
It's going to be. You got to. You go have the surgery and go through a really, long and laborious, hard recovery session.
Exactly.
Or
right. Yep.
you just get it moving again and try and do everything you can as per Exhibit A and Exhibit B.
Yep.
Of that. Now you don't have to have the surgery and you pop out the other end and
Yep.
it's fucking so much easier.
And I mean, I'm not saying that I don't have pain anymore by any means.
For sure,
You're not God who's just gone. The pain is gone. Let's go to the gym.
Yep.
But it's more manageable. And
Quality of life, man.
Yeah. And
without a surgery.
And rewiring your brain, rewiring your axons, might I say. Steve,
did.
what was I like when you first gave me needles?
That's a great question. Let's talk about the needles
And you
thing.
think about
Well,
dry needling.
it wasn't even probably to the fact of even like the dry needling itself. I remember when James first came in, obviously he'd been beaten down. He had chronic pain in the lower back, which was killing you a bit.
Yep.
Your shoulder was cooked. And there was just an all-around disbelief in a bad mental state, which you do get. And I deal that with a lot of veterans, which does. And it compiles on everything else. Like you got this chronic pain, you're not sleeping well, your health's not well, you're not exercising, you're not eating well. Your relationships go down. And there's all this compounding sort of thing, and everything's a little bit too hard at that point. And like we were saying, that little chip away at it modality is the way we went out of it. And then when I took James in, we did our initial assessments. We just started really slow, and then what you get is this compounding effect of self-belief, this strengthening. You start to see a little bit of the results, and at the start you got to give yourself a bit of grace and just go in there and start doing the fundamentals. And then all of a sudden we started from, like we were saying, couldn't even overhead press with the bar, couldn't deadlift, couldn't pick up objects really without having pain in the lower back, to deadlifting 120 kilos, to overhead pressing, benching 100 kilos, like an absolute turnaround. But probably to that mind, like say with the Axon analogy, the biggest thing probably is obviously you do get your neurological adaptations and stuff like that. But as you're getting stronger, whether we change the actual physiology or not, there is this perception of the brain and your capability and a downgrading of your actual total pain.
Absolutely.
And then as you get an increase in your mental health and your clarity and you get fitter and stronger and you're seeing the benefits, there is a downregulation of pain. And because pain is a complex thing, it's it can be unregulated. And if you're in those feedback loops where it's, I can't do this, that really hurts, you'll self-defeat yourself. And
You tell
spiral
yourself,
down.
yeah.
And you'll tell yourself you can't make it out of it. And it's going to, I'm like this for life. And I've got a back of a 7-year-old. And I hear this all the time. And you'll,
Quite unquote. I've
These
said
are pretty
myself.
powerful.
7 or
yeah.
70?
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah.
But that's a common thing, and there's a lot of that. You'll have that belief, and you'll feel that as well,
Yes.
which is true. And then like there's an analogy, particularly with veterans, I sort of like to come back to with pain and the individualities, and particularly say, for example, people potentially with PTSD is like the snake walking through the grass. So if someone walks through the grass and they get hit by a stick and they don't really have a phobia of the stick, they'll just react normally. Oh shit, there was a stick. If you've got a big phobia of snakes and you get hit, the initial actual physiological reaction is detrimental and affects the body. Like, and it's real. But that comes from the brain's perception of it. And so when we increase, obviously, your strength and your capabilities and whatever else, you actually down-regulate and the belief mindset changes, and then, you're good to go from there. And then there's no absolute right or wrong ways to do things. It's just, moving forward with it and building that self-confidence.
I know for a fact every single veteran listening to this podcast or watching it on whatever platform it is just sitting here doing these ones. Yep. Can relate. Let me go back to the prehab versus rehab. Do you feel as if you have more people come to you that have had the opportunity of, like, my circumstance or James' circumstance, we're trying to avoid a surgery, or the hammer's dropped metaphorically and they're now on rehab with you?
Yeah, so
Probably the latter?
Early in my piece, I think there was very much like people were just like, you've done whatever. This is the only really fix. But then, as I said, there's starting to be a catch up with the actual evidence that's coming up. So a lot of doctors and, a lot of people are going to try the alternative methods more now, but particularly back in the older days, I've got a lot of old veterans that have got fused backs, which really shouldn't have happened. And the research for that is bad. And they needed it at the time, and I'm not discrediting anyone that's done that to them, but then there's botched up knees, and it's not from the surgeon's fault, but they probably could have just rehabbed those, and you've only got so much organic tissue, and to go in and manipulate it around, like I said, again, sometimes you're in a position, depending on your where you will need surgery, but at the end of the day, I always sort of say you can't go wrong getting strong, and then if you need to get the surgery,
Love that one.
You
Can't go wrong getting strong.
That's right, yeah. And then even to that point with the prehab rehab, the surgeons are always going to push to do some strengthening anyway, because the outcomes are so much better. Your connective tissue's better, your biomechanics are better, you have a better healing rate the fitter you are when you get out of it, you've got better blood flow, or better mental health to it. So
that's what the old mate was saying to me about. This is the reason why you should maybe choose a bit of
and then you'll
prehab.
come out and your post-surgery outcomes. And then I've had people that have done their rehab and they've weighed it up and they've gotten increased function. Like, I still want to get this right. I want to get the surgery, and then they go do that and they still have a pretty good outcome. But
they're not starting from here. They're starting.
That's
from here.
right. Yeah. And if you're a deconditioned person, go straight into surgery. You're sort of going from nothing to a deficit and then trying to build your way back out of that.
Yeah.
So
It's powerful.
No one wants that.
Very powerful.
Have you had some really horrible injuries that you've had to try and treat? Like teaching people how to walk again and stuff?
Yeah, there's I haven't worked too much in acute hospital settings myself.
Right.
Like, definitely when I was sort of going through university and doing placements at different physio clinics, you did see like some of those acute sort of brain injuries. You saw I'd work with cardiovascular patients as well that have had like stage 4, heart failure or even emphysema and what. And you can see all the various horrible sort of conditions you can get out there, but can be helped with a bit of exercise. But and like even still currently today, even with veterans themselves, like I've got one of my patients, he's a ex-SAS, but lost his foot serving overseas as well. So and there's only so much you can sort of do, but it is an improvement in their quality of their life. And that's what you're going for. You can't really, some of them you really can't get completely out of pain and which is, it's hard to face that. But if you can give them some quality of life and an improvement in fitness, or, able to do stuff they weren't able to do or thought they weren't going to be able to do, it's pretty rewarding. But yeah, back to your point, there's been some shockers for sure over the years, but
Oh, I mean, on the back of that, like one of the cool things I like working with you, Steve, as well, is it's not just about going into a gym environment and working on weights and recovering the shoulder. If I walk in and I say my back is cooked today from that session the other day, you'll be like, right, well, let's just leave this out for now. Let's go in the room and do some physical treatment.
Yeah.
So it might be massage, it might be needling, might be stretching. So you're not just about that physical. You can do Pilates and the list goes on. It's not, you're a personal trainer in a sense, but you've got so much more experience and abilities to be able to treat.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
And it'll come like it's not black and white rehab, and you could be killing it like at some point, and then there's always going to be a little drop off, and that's once you know that it's part of the process. You sort of give yourself a bit of a rest mentally, and there's no shame in coming and going, fuck, my back's a bit crook. Like, can we just do a bit of Pilates and
it's okay
stretch
to not
it
be
out?
okay one
and it's
day.
like, as long as you do something, like that's my motto. Even if you just walk for 5 or 10 minutes, like,
and we've had plenty of days
something.
like that where I've walked in and gone, I'm pretty ratted today, and you're going, that's right, you're here.
I was just about to say the most powerful bit about it though is that you haven't let yourself down. Because if he didn't exist and you felt rat shit, you go home and rest.
Stay at home. Oh, fuck this.
But now you've got someone that you don't want to let down.
That's right.
That relationship.
I've gone home. I really want to have a beer. No, I've got a training session today.
Yeah, and to like your point, Robbie, like the accountability. Anyone that like anything I'm saying, anyone can type into Google and you can get a Pilates workout. You can get there's more shit on the internet than it's the power is in the accountability and doing it. So, and that's the good thing if you can team up. And much like say for example, if I'm wanting to invest in my future with you guys, I'll sort of sit around the end. But if I've got a meeting with yourself, Robbie, or even just your conversations, it makes me start to get some deadlines in my head. And I'm like, I've got to get moving. The property's going up. I've got to start investing here. I'll start investing in crypto.
When's a good time to buy? Well, yesterday, mate.
James is talking about crypto. I'm not a crypto guy.
Not a crypto guy?
No. I work
James
too
sent me
hard
down
for
the
my
hole.
money to have fucking a tweet by Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Vladimir Putin change my
Drive 20%
financial
off your
fucking
portfolio.
direction. No thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm loving this, by the way. Is there a favourite body part you like working on, or do you feel as if you've got more expertise in one or the other?
Like you might need a
neck,
sense at this
back.
point.
Or does he do that as well?
I don't have a particular. I know there's definitely, and I think it's a good business model to. Not that this is about business building, but to be niched in a certain particular spot because, like, say you do bang your shoulder.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. And no, I don't particularly. I've got a bit of a overall strength and conditioning background that I just bring to the table, and it's my nicheness would be. It's like I said, I'm not an orthodox sort of therapist, and it's a bit more free flowing coming in, and if not anything, it's community welfare, looking after the person, and they might come in. We'll do, like I said, the tiniest thing. We could just walk for 5 minutes, have a chat, and see what it's like and how you're going. And that's more powerful at the time than it is to follow my black and white program to do 20 push-ups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
good. You're adaptive.
Yeah, adaptive and
instinctive.
Probably my biggest thing is like, you can know all the methods. I don't think it's a Carl Jung quote or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're working with a human that might need different care at different times. So I think the psychology of it is a big, powerful thing too, which,
Do you like working with, there's the cause of the pain, but like, let's go upstream and find out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Like I've just been amazed as my injuries have evolved over the years.
Yep.
The interconnectedness
For sure.
of the body
Yep.
just continues to amaze me.
Yeah.
I sit with a relevant professional sitting and goes, the reason why you're feeling this particular way is that's where you got the pain, but it's actually coming from way back up here. And they just map it all out for me. Do you enjoy
No, absolutely.
discovering that and then also
finding the
passing
root
it on?
cause.
Yeah.
A big thing with, like, to your point, and because a lot of the time, if you can't, say, for example, let's say your elbow joint, and a lot of people will get
One of the things that's okay. There's not many, but you've chosen one that's not that.
Touch wood.
Yeah, well.
But commonly for a lot of blokes, they will get, like, say, tennis elbow, which is on the back of the elbow and whatnot. But little do people know, usually that will stem from a shoulder instability. If they're overhead, the elbow joint has to act in a way that it doesn't normally. And that can happen throughout the whole of the body.
Yeah.
So it is, to your point, it's important to not just look at the elbow, treat the elbow. You have to look upstream, downstream. And then you can sort of, usually when I do some physical assessments, it'll highlight to the patient that they're like, oh shit, that actually makes sense because I actually can't get my shoulder up to that point, and I feel my elbow doing the work when I'm, and it sort of makes sense to the patients and gives them that holistic approach to it. And then the narrative you get out of it is a bit more concise. It's like if you went to a mechanic and they're like, oh, you just need to replace this part. But if they give you a bit of a run through and you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Or if you don't replace it, this is what
this will
the
blow up.
knock-on
Yeah,
effect
yeah,
is
exactly
gonna be.
right. Yeah, exactly.
What would you say I'm just thinking of all these questions as we're going along. What would be the most common ailment that veterans come to you with?
It would have to be the lower back, and I think, but
Right.
that would be probably to the veteran side of it in, particularly Army, the pack marching that you had to do, and depending on the amount of years and what you did with the service, but even like the guys that are in the tanks and whatever else, it's always commonly the lower back's got a quicker degeneration.
Yeah.
And that's so much compressive force over so much time, like we were saying, pack marching. So the lower back is probably the most common. Then from that, it would just be your general sort of hips, shoulders, and knees type thing. But
Yeah.
the back is the big one, I would say. And but in saying that, obviously that is particular to veterans. The mass majority of us are going to have a bit of back pain. Just not as degenerated as quick for sure. So, yeah.
One of the trends that I saw, I think it was my second time to Afghanistan, so it would have been like 2009, 2010. There's a big gym set up in the Tarankout thing there, and it was just fucking full of weights and full of all the compound exercises that's, traditional.
Yep.
But there was a select group of people within the special ops task group that weren't using that, and they were doing more yoga-based stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I have done a number of yoga classes over the years for a few years. But yeah, just talk to us about the benefits that you've seen with the yoga, the Pilates. When you're a sledgehammer bullet trying to go sort of bloke, and certainly now the mates of mine, mostly clients, I must say, that are still working in the SOCOM space.
Yep.
They say that more modernised, advanced, softer, all over body strength, flexibility training is just as important as the strength stuff.
For sure. Like, and that, we tend to have a bit of an old school methodology, especially the older vets that was like, go in, bang and clang, don't worry about it, just, max out on your squats. And even when I was
wrong
younger,
with being strong.
That's it. Can't go wrong getting strong. That's right.
Sorry, I just butchered your fucking saying. I've remembered this one, but it's not even close.
But
what he said.
In saying that, like, it is important to deload, let the joints actually go through full range and have the tissue have that full extensibility. And as we were talking about, because you can go through these linear sort of movements and they're not as practical to your real life sort of settings type thing, and you'll get good at a back squat or pushing that way or pulling that way, whereas we try and get up overhead or reach behind your back, and which you'll go through with those Pilates movements.
Yeah, if you think you're strong in the gym, and if you are strong in the gym, try and do a Pilates session.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll make the strongest
that first
blokes
time,
and ladies.
Yeah.
It'll make you feel like this.
And if you've got a bag of groceries or something in the back of the car and you're going to need to reach over and then get back for out in this, no wonder people tear their back.
That's right. And it can happen in the simplest of things.
They can bloody, deadlift till the cows come home.
That's right.
But a simple bloody 8-9 kilos of groceries on a slightly different angle, you're toast.
That's right. And you haven't adapted to that position and built quality of tissue and strength. And so although you are, like we said, you're really strong going linearly and you could move a ball that way, but we'd rotate you, twist you down that way. The body's never twisted that way. It's unfamiliar. You put a little bit of load on it in that position then. And that's a common one, but even to my context, when I was younger, I remember the back pain's so complex. I even picked up a sock and my back's on. I'm like, that is weird. And
I'm getting old.
Times over 2 weeks ago, I was deadlifting 200 kilos, and now, but yeah, and it's a complex thing, I guess. But
it's quite often like you see one of some of the big bloody buff gym boys in our workspaces. I'm like, oh fuck, what happened to your back? Oh, I bent down to pick up my kid's sock.
Yeah.
And it was that bit there
That
because
was it.
you're on a different plane in a
That's
different
right.
position that you haven't really trained for. It's just been the linear.
Can
rack and
deadlift
stack.
150 kilos, but I
Sort of
picked up my kid's bag, and that was it. Pop, dang, gone.
And it's important to go through full range with load and get yourself, which you do get in Pilates, yoga, and even general sort of stretching.
Yeah,
We spent
I
the
agree.
first 6 months doing that.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying before. It's that first 6 months of
Yeah.
no weights, like very little weight, deloading, getting the flexibility, getting the whole body
That's
moving,
right,
not
yeah.
just those basic straightforward
Yeah.
movements, and also, back it's that psychological as well, where you're increasing the resilience and of your pain tolerance.
Yeah.
What we were saying before, and classic example was when, if I'd feel a bit tight one day, I'd go in and say, oh, yeah, I'm really sore, so he'd start doing needles. And the classic example at the start, like going back 12 months ago, we put some needles in my lower back, and then as soon as it hit that nerve, it was like my whole body would seize up because my brain has said, I felt this pain before when I originally done my back, and this is bad. So your whole body naturally just goes into protection mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck.
Yeah, it's happening.
And we got to keep trying, keep doing, keep taking those chips off the sculpture. And now you can do needles on my back, and I'll be like, "Yep, that's it. It's hitting that nerve. I can feel that now." And now it's like that mentality has changed, and you got your cognizant pain, and then you got your uncognitive pain, where your brain goes reactively without you even knowing it. That's hurting. So stop what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just telling that brain unconsciously that it's okay. It's not that bad.
Because, of course, when you're doing your strength and conditioning, you'll be saying to your clients, get a mind-muscle connection happening there.
That's right.
Feel the squeeze, visualize what's going on, contraction and expansion in the muscles there. You're going to get a better workout.
No,
but
and
of
that's
course,
right.
sometimes we want to be able to separate that.
Yeah, and the evidence is in line with that. The actual, funnily enough, particularly in the bodybuilding world as well, the mind-muscle connection.
Yep.
And then people that can recruit their tissue better, you recruit more motor units and more fibers come together when you're lifting the weight, when you get that mind-muscle connection, and therefore you get greater hypertrophy, greater strength. So it is super important to have that mind-muscle connection. And particularly, like I was saying, in the pain side of thing, the seeing yourself do it and getting the feedback to your brain, and the subconscious autonomic nervous system is sort of going, hey, actually it's safe to bend over because, well, I've been doing it for six months, and I've picked up 100 kilos off the ground. I can bend over. Whereas initially people at the start will have a really abrasive, fear-based sort of...
They sort of brace up their knees.
You'll see that.
Because they don't want that pain again.
And it's the brakes are on with their body. It's like, hey, well,
from the start,
this isn't safe. We're not safe to do this because the last time we did this, I was in that much pain. And so it's just a slow down regulation of obviously quality of tissue, and you get stronger and whatever else, but then that mental, subconscious, and cognizant pain really does matter, and that's in a lot of general sort of things in life, I suppose too.
And it doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, that's right.
It's like I say for myself, it's probably taken at least 6 months. Of repetitive, re-exploring that same pain area to be able to get retrain my brain. And again, I'm not completely out of pain. None of us will be entirely. But it's just, again, raising that threshold.
It's a forever game, almost like with your strength training. There's no end game. The trick is to stay in the game and keep at it. Keep consistent, keep at it. You're never out of it. You know what I mean? Even when we're 80 to 90, you just got to keep chipping at it, rocking up every day.
Consistency is your best friend.
The longer you wait, the harder it becomes.
And that's right. And
you go away for a couple of weeks. You go overseas holiday for a couple of weeks. You come back and you're back into it again. You walk around sore as from a DOM's point of view. But then that's gone, and then you're back into it again.
Exactly.
Talk to me about your view on supplements.
Supplements,
So does it make creatine, protein, branched chain amino acids and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. So with the research, probably the top biggest reward you can get, I guess, like depending on what your goals are on that, but creatine's probably the most studied one. That's been around for like 30 years, and there's like thousands of studies on it. But it's also showing a lot of cognition performance. So you've got, and particularly say with people that might have a bit of brain damage, which can happen in the forces, like with the little micro traumas that you can get with the jolting and whatnot. So creatine's shown to help with neurogenesis and brain cognition. Obviously, supplementing with protein, whether you get that or get it through your diet, is like crucial because we have a certain amount of protein turnover every day that you need to upkeep, especially if you're having a crack at it. And then the one that's probably the biggest one for performance is just actually caffeine, I think, like with the data of it. And branch chains.
Positive or negative?
Positive, increased performance basically. So if you're looking to max out on your lift or, get an increase in your focus or output, because it stimulates your nervous system basically. And then to that and then there's like emerging stuff, which is sort of doctors are starting to delve into. It's a bit of a grey area, which is like the peptide sort of thing. Yeah. So
for some reason, I don't know what I was looking at when I was on the piss or something one weekend. I'm like getting these BP 157s, like just
stuff like that.
Someone would have spoken about it. The phone's listened.
The random algorithm.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
what's this? And then tomorrow's like, oh, my doctor spoke to me about that. So there is some emerging sort of peptide stuff. Yeah,
it's the funny thing because it's such and it makes me wonder why there probably isn't more of a push. But I think at the end of the day, they're a natural occurring thing in your body, and you can't patent them. So I don't think there's ever going to be a big pharma's not going to fund it because there's no profit. Because you could start your business and then create your own peptides. But they are like this grey area because they're not a hormone, but they do help your body produce better hormones that help you recover. And so you're organically growing your own hormones. Basically, you inject it and it goes to your pituitary gland, and then you get an increase in whatever it is, growth hormone, collagen deposits, all these crazily good things for a rehab standpoint.
Right.
And I have had patients where the doctors are starting to branch into it and prescribe it, and then it's
you guys can't as EPs.
No,
so
we
it's
can't.
Got to be doctor and
there's
above.
a certain amount that the doctors are allowed to, and then a couple of them, I think it might be like ipamorelin and maybe BPC and stuff like that. So they can start to play with it. But then, when you do see it happen, it's pretty powerful stuff. So,
so you've seen it in action.
Yeah,
So,
I've had probably like a good handful of my patients even currently now, but have tried them out. And they are pretty groundbreaking stuff, I think. But yeah, and I think the only reason it is sort of stigmatized a bit because it's in that, obviously back in 2016 you had Resident that got done with the peptide scandals, and then
that's my footy team too.
Is it?
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, the Bombers. Yeah. So
nothing to see here.
They had a great weekend.
Yeah.
but so a lot of that stuff, like your testosterone, that they get lumped into performance enhancing drugs, whereas the actual heart of them are very therapeutic, and that's how they all start. It's just like, obviously, athletes and performance and bodybuilders figure out, hey, this is going to make me bigger and stronger, so they'll abuse it a little bit. Yeah, they'll help you recover quicker, and then also with like testosterones, and
because they see it as a performance enhancing drug.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but, and it's when you're saying before about big pharma taking over, the only one peptide which people don't realize or actually started off as peptides is things like the weight loss drugs.
Yeah, the semaglutides.
That's fine. Why? Because there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah,
people want to get skinny quicker or lose weight without having to put down the fork.
Yeah.
So people, things like Ozempic and semaglutide and stuff are now a lot more. They're becoming a lot more normalized.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If you told people that is a peptide, then talk to people about other peptides like BPC that you were just saying.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it'd be in the same boat.
Yeah. Well,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
No, it's super interesting. And again, I sort of rack my brain a little bit because it does, obviously, in the in vitro studies, when you read them, they like have these, enormous growth they'll usually use rat studies and whatever, and they might cut the leg of the rat, and the healing rates are like crazy on the rats with wound healing and tendon healing and all that sort of side of things. So, and even I talked to, there's one bloke I sort of brush shoulders with that is a surgeon. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this after this convo, but no, I'm joking.
You can bleep it out.
Yeah. And he was like, he's right into it, and he's had a few patients that have gotten on them post their surgeries, whatever they're doing, and then he's like, it's going to be the way of the future for sure. But the only reason doctors really, and we can't go full ball and prescribe it out, is because there isn't that large scale study of safety and efficacy. But in saying that, I don't think that's ever really going to happen, because if I was to fund it, I'm not really going to get a profit. It's just going to benefit humanity. And
if it stays small, it'll stay small. Therefore, how do the large scale studies get done?
That's right. Yeah. So, and that's what gives the backing for a doctor to prescribe it, because they know, hey, look, there's been 10,000 studies, and I can safely give this to you. And because their biggest thing's not to harm you with something they don't really know could or not. So it is experimental in some sense. So
that's what I looked at when I saw that thing come up on my feed on the Instagram or Facebook, whatever it was. I'm like, it's just all about connective tissue, ligaments, and things like that, as far as like that's what the BPC like focuses in on.
Yep.
I'm like, fuck, how can that be bad?
Yeah.
That's not muscle building.
No,
that's the interconnective tissue
that's
stuff.
Right. It doesn't necessarily give you super physiological muscle or growth, but you do get, like you're saying, like you get an increase in blood flow and mitochondrial density and capillary density to the damaged area.
Yeah, right.
So like, you get an increase in nutrient supply to the area. It's anti-inflammatory. It also neuroprotective, probably good for your heart and whatever else. So there's all these crazy benefits you can get from those type of things. But I'm not, obviously the data's lacking, so I'm not going to say.
No, not endorsing it.
I
It's just, that's
was
the
just
information
interested
that's out
in your viewpoint.
Yeah.
And all these questions have been non-scripted, right? I'm just thanks for answering, I should say.
Anecdotally, I've seen really good results, and that's anecdotal, and I can't put numbers or research or behind it, but I have seen some positive results with it. And then, in saying that, there's probably the outliers that have had zero. They're like, "Fuck, I don't think that really helped," but that could be compliance.
I bet there's a bunch of people like my body has an aversion to creatine.
Yeah,
it turns it into creatine, which just makes me go to the toilet all the time.
Oh,
and has my
your kidneys get a bit.
My kidneys and renal gland gets fucking smashed.
Yeah.
So, because I hadn't had it for like 15 years, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I might jump on the creatine again. Got my blood test done, which I do every 3 months. My doctor's like, what the fuck's going on with your kidneys? I'm like, I haven't really been drinking that much this quarter. He goes, nah, man. He goes, this is so. Then he goes, nah, pull back, and I pull back, and it's come back into safe levels again.
Because
so everyone's different, right?
Did you have any side effects other than that?
No, I just want to go to the toilet all the time.
Yeah, right. Yep. And I'm not. Yeah, obviously I'm not a doctor, but usually with those type of things, you will get like, say for example, people that do TRT or that, you will get like an increase in some blood. Whether that's significant or not, I'm not too sure. But yeah, it's definitely like say for example, if you're doing TRT, you're going to get an increase in cholesterols, blood pressures, and stuff like that. And it's not so much blood pressure isn't good to increase, but there is this skewing of normal bloods that will probably likely happening. Whether that's detrimental or not, it's
One last little thing I want to pass on is when you get out and you're on the DVA thing and you've got some accepted conditions and you find an awesome DVA doctor like we have here on the Gold Coast, I go there as a 52-year-old guy. Ever since the day I got out 12 years ago, I've been getting my bloods done at least once a year.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm just talking about markers and trends and things like that. I mean, I'm sure you're a fan. So if you're able to go get them done and it's funded through, the DVA program, which we're all entitled to, if you've got those sorts of injuries, just the peace of mind that it provides me as a guy who is getting a bit older, that my markers are in check, or I've changed my diet, or I'm taking something different in that particular quarter. So I get it done every 3 months now. I get my bloods done. Go there, whack a needle in my arm, you just no eating first thing in the morning, boom, give it to the doctor, go sit down and actually go through the scores of the markers. So much clarity and so much peace of mind.
No,
I think that's over the years as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and I'd probably highly recommend. And I wish I did that when I was younger, so you could see where you
don't give a fuck when you're 25. Hangovers don't exist.
No.
You can go to fucking rock up to work the next day
Bulletproof.
to PT, having not gone to sleep and fucking still kill everyone else. Not like that when you're fucking 40s plus.
Yeah.
You're not even 40 yet. That's coming up soon. You wait till you're fucking over 40. You wait till you get to 50.
In 2 weeks, I'm going downhill.
What a hangover looks like. But I definitely want to implore to everybody that if you're a veteran and you're north of 40 and you're out, I got out when I was 41, go get your fucking bloods every few months. Every 6 months, every 12 months, whatever it is. But don't put your head in the sand because shit will creep up on you.
That's
and
right.
I just know that all the different types of markers and glucose and blood pressure and all the real technical stuff that comes out that I had to fucking even Google what it was for. I'm so glad now that I know what my body's doing molecularly.
For
I don't know
sure.
if that's a term, but you know what I mean, right?
And to that, at least you're accruing evidence up over a long period of time. And then if you feel off or something's wrong, you can look at your own data and go, fuck, that's really dropped down. And even though it's not out of norm, I can try and push that up. And you've got your own data of evidence because everyone runs at a different norm ratio. That just because you're in range might not mean that you're optimal.
That's right.
Yeah,
cool, mate. I've really enjoyed that. Let's wrap it up, lads. Thank you so much. That was a conversation that's like I said, I've just been talking to my PT/EP/brother-in-law. How the fuck do I get this message out? You can train your way out of having to have a major surgery.
Why not give it a go?
Individual circumstances, apply.
Give it a go.
But you've heard it from the man now, Stevie B. Thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Appreciate
I hope you
it.
enjoyed
Thanks
that.
for me.
Just quickly, how do people get in? So if you're a veteran here on the Gold Coast,
Yep.
I would love it if you get a chance to reach out and have a consult with you through your
for
DVA
sure.
doctor.
Yep.
Just quickly talk us through the mechanics of how that happens.
Yeah. So if you're basically if you're on the Gold Coast, I work out of Bundle, and I'm just located in Never Quit Gym. But essentially, all you'd have to do is go to your GP, get a D904 form, basically filled out for Exercise Physiology and myself. And if you got questions, you could probably go onto my Instagram or Facebook, which is just
All the links will be down the bottom of this
Health.
podcast and everything. Yep.
And then, once, obviously, if you've got your gold or white card, there is little nuances that aren't too crazy. But if you're going down the steps, definitely reach out. And, it's as easy as that. And then come on in and we can sit down and have a chat.
Fantastic. And like I said, James, thank you so much for joining us, mate. I just knew throughout multiple parts of that podcast that there was everyone listening going, yep,
That's me.
can relate.
Make
So,
yourself accountable. Veterans are terrible at looking after yourself, but when you've got a mate that you got to be waiting for, they'll always look after somebody else. So accountability is a big one.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
like I said, just don't always have to go for the surgery mark. Just get yourself out there, if not for physical, for your headspace.
And remember, there's
for
nothing
sure.
wrong
Biggest
with
spot.
being strong. Have I fucked that up again? No, and also please remember, ladies and gents, the whole little ice pick analogy.
Ice
As
pick.
soon as I heard that for the first time, for all you other bull in the china shop blokes out there, fucking rock on. It doesn't need to be that way, but you just got to change your mindset. Hope you enjoyed that. See you again next time. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve.